My name is Thomas Epperson. I'm a student at the Miami Valley School. This speech is brought to you by the American Government and Speech class, Unit 2. So I'm here today to talk to you about the Three-Fifths Compromise. What is the Three-Fifths Compromise? It's a doctrine that was proposed in the early 1780s, and it occurred during the Great Compromise. The Great Compromise was it was basically an event in which all the delegates from the states came together and debated for amendments to the Constitution. Alright, so let's refocus a little here. So what specifically was the Three-Fifths Compromise? If from reading directly from the book, the Three-Fifths Compromise basically asks the question, slaves were property of the slave owners or plantation owners. When the population was counted for the U.S. and the states, would the slave owners or the slaves be counted as citizens to be represented in the national government? Basically, on a national scale, the Three-Fifths Compromise stated that for every 5 slaves, 3 would be counted when the population was being counted to determine representation. What questions can we draw from observing this? So 1. How does the compromise reflect the influence of wealthy plantation owners on the national government, and how did they make their point? What were the specific conditions of the Three-Fifths Compromise? Lastly, how did the outcome of the Three-Fifths Compromise set a precedent, if it did, in today's economy, and how does it represent the voice of the people in this decision, if it does? About 1 to 5% of the population in the South that received a full formal education. And most of these wealthy Americans have positions of power in the local government or the federal government. George Washington is a prime example. He was a plantation owner. He had slaves. So my point is basically all the plantation owners were they were very wealthy. They had positions of power in the local or federal government. They're going to have power over the rest of the people, and they're going to be able to voice their opinion and gain support fairly easily. So let's just think about it. If you're an average farmer and you were trying to get representation for your slaves because you wanted to have a bigger voice in the government, if you were one guy, if you were just a normal person, you had no power, you were just a farmer who lived down the street, just sort of that little stigma, you're not going to have much power in the government, and you're not going to have much sway over the people to argue your position. So, back on track, the plantation owners argued that since the slaves were a large part of the population in the South and were property of many government officials, shouldn't they get at least some representation, if not full? So, basically their point was, we have these we have this property. I mean, technically they're people, but in the North, like, you guys have all these free men, or technically free people, that get representation, like indentured servants, those sort of people, working class citizens that are getting representation, basically, yeah. Shouldn't at least some of these people get represented in the government? And the North argued that, I'm stereotyping this, of course, the North argued basically, no, just because the slaves aren't paying taxes, you're paying the taxes for them, so only you get representation. Or at least that's what some of them tried to argue. Alright, so my last question. Did the outcome of the Three-Fifths Compromise set a precedent for how we or how things are argued in our politics today? So I guess what would be a relative topic to today? In our class, we've been watching this movie called Free Speech for Sale. It's basically about how big industry is drowning out the voice of the common man like you or me. So, for example, if I went to the government and said, these pig farm or these hog farms are ruining the ecosystem. It's threatening the health of my grandmother and my neighbor. This needs to be stopped, and there needs to be some regulations against some of this waste disposal because it's destroying property value, economy, and the lives of the local citizens. And basically, this movie is saying how my voice would not be heard, basically, because big industry will drown it out. Alright, so you're probably asking yourself, what the heck does this have to do with the Three-Fifths Compromise? Well, this scenario described in Free Speech for Sale, it's basically today, alright. So the Founding Fathers could not have anticipated that large companies would be buying free speech and drowning out the voice of the common man. I think that the Great Compromise and the Three-Fifths Compromise was really it was one of the best examples of this not happening. This is the way. It was an example of the way our founding fathers, the framers, intended our government to work. How do we bring back the original form of our government, or how do we reinforce the way our government was intended to work and give the microphone, as it were, back to the little guy, back to the average man, or woman? No. So I guess that's the big problem with our politics today. We need to develop a system to bring the voice back to the little guy or the average man or woman, so we can get the views of all the people and not be drowned out by big business and not have free speech bought out by the big industry or a wealthy politician. Alright, so thanks for listening to my speech. I know I went well over the time limit. Thanks for bearing with me. If you get a chance to check out the channel, our American Government Speech class is doing some amazing work. So check it out.